Please welcome Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer, Tim Lang.
Hi everyone, that song always makes me smile. Thanks everyone for being here. As you can tell, I've got a slight Australian accent, but I'm glad to be with you all here today. It's a pleasure to be at MicroStrategy World. Over the last 2 days, I sent out a couple of messages to your Usher badges. So if during my presentation sometime today, you can pull up your Usher app, and in the new inbox feature, you can actually scroll down and see the messages we sent out. I already see that some of you went to the party last night, and some went to the gym, and some went to bed early. So let's see how the rest of you vote later in my presentation. So I'm bringing up the safe harbor statement, but I want to talk a little bit specifically about how we build software. And what's really important here is there's a lot of things that we're going to show you that when I was on stage this time last year, some of the things were further out. We're super excited that many things you're going to get to see today are much closer, and the team has been working super hard on that. Every single quarter we've been releasing software, and we've been releasing both feature releases as well as updates on the platform releases every single quarter, including the recent release of 10.7 and 10.4.3. So we take feedback from many of our customers, and we take it in the form of our customer advisory board. We take it in the form of meetings. We take it in the form of idea exchange and many other forms. And that has a very specific impact on the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. And we do make modifications to the roadmap based on the active feedback from many of you in the audience. I'd like to thank all of those that participated on Tuesday in our customer advisory board. It was great to have a lot of feedback on our big data strategy as well as what we're doing around platform analytics. So thank all of you for that participation. So MicroStrategy has been a leader in the analytics business, and we wake up every day thinking about how can we give better access to information. Since 1989, we've been really innovating and driving innovation, and we want to push analytics to the edges of your organization. So we want to make sure that we can make much better and stronger decisions every single day. So before we actually look at where we're going, I think it's a little bit important to look at some of the transformations that have happened over the years and to see how decision-making and information actually helped people evolve. So we think back in history, and we had the Neanderthals. I always make that one up. And where are they today? Right? They're extinct. The Homo sapiens, over time, ended up being the dominant race, and we're all in the room because of that. Though one of my friends, according to 23andMe, has 0.1% Neanderthal, and he knows who he is. You might run support. Okay. So what made the difference between Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens? Well, Homo sapiens were able to develop language. They're able to communicate. And in communication, they're able to tell stories. They're able to tell stories to each other. They're able to get organized. They're able to be able to battle. And that ability to tell stories really grew the human race and our ability to actually solve problems. The next evolution that came was the written form. And the written form originally was in story form. It was in books, right? And so obviously chiseled from stone originally and papyrus paper, but later often written down in written format. And that innovation allowed us to actually share knowledge, but it was very limited in terms of the volumes that were available. The Industrial Revolution made us able to actually much more broadly communicate, generate books and manuals so that we can communicate. Whether they were stories or poems or math or science or other different forms, we're able to much more dramatically communicate to each other. All of us in the room went to school and we all learnt out of textbooks, we all learnt stories, and we were able to be able to communicate. We were able to share knowledge. We became smarter and smarter because of our ability to share communication. At the heart of everything we do or we've learnt in books has been our ability to tell stories and continue what actually made us strong in our original uptake of language. There's been another transformation. You know, when we went from the written form to the digital form, we saw an explosion in ability to communicate. No longer did you have to travel boundaries to communicate and be able to talk from here to Australia, right? Or travel vast distances. Like my mother-in-law came when she went on the boats from England to Australia, right? You're able to actually communicate much more actively. So the digital transformation that went all the way through the end of the war, through into the 50s, 60s, 70s, and today has fundamentally changed how we make decisions. And so that started gently, but the rate and the pace of data has been incredible, right? I remember talking about a terabyte being an amazing amount of data. Who would ever need a terabyte of data, right? And today we're not talking about terabytes. We're actually talking about petabytes. Google generates 20 petabytes of data a day. Many of you in this room are dealing with petabyte data stores, right? And so the volume of data is increasing. In 2016 alone, more data was generated than the history of mankind. That's the volume. So you need to think differently about how do we actually work with massive volumes of data. And how can we analyze that? And how can we actually tell stories to one another? So we've got a large volume of data, but there's also been a fundamental transformation in how we consume information. When I take a look today at the audience, right, all of you in this room have got maybe laptops in your bags, you've got an iPhone, you've got a tablet, right, in your office, maybe you've got a video walls like we have, right? To be able to consume data. You know, many of you in the room are generating telemetry just like I am. I've got my Fitbit on. I'm generating heartbeats and steps as I'm walking up and down the stage. I'm getting more steps than Michael is because he's sitting at the front. So we generate a lot of data, but from a consumption side, our interfaces are different. And for us to communicate effectively and tell stories to every single worker in your organization, they can't be in front of a computer necessarily. They need to be accessed in front of a tablet or an iPad. And from an IT perspective, you want to make sure that I build it once and I can deploy it everywhere. Right? I don't want to have extra overhead of actually choosing what do I need to do specifically to support it working on a smartphone or to be able to work on a tablet. And so we believe it's a critical point. So one of the projects we're going to talk about today is our Dossier project. And Dossier takes its lineages from those books we talked about originally, right? A book is a collection. It's a series of chapters and verses. It allows you to actually tell a story. It allows you to create a collection. Now, historically, we had bookshelves which we had the books on, right? Today, we're used to those electronic libraries or those electronic bookshelves, so we're going to talk about that construct as well. It's important as we kind of tell our stories and we show insight to our organizations that we are connected. That what we do is connected to all of our data sources. It allows us to collaborate and interact on the data, right? And share our knowledge, right? Knowledge is not just the bits and bytes that's in the data warehouse, but it's how we augment as individuals. Artificial intelligence can actually help provide you information, but it's really human intelligence that can actually take and leverage that to actually drive success. So at MicroStrategy, our vision is intelligence anywhere. And over the next hour or so, I'm actually going to go through and give you a series of demonstrations that highlight some of the amazing work we've been doing in the technology team to take all of the feedback we've had from many of you over the last while and actually showcase that in software. I'm excited about this presentation and what we put together. It was exciting to see the team working on it. We've got a lot of this comes from live builds of our software, and we're super excited to get this into many of our customers' hands. We have an early adopter program for Dossier and Workstation that we launched with 10.6 and then 10.7. And we really would be super excited to have more customers actively participate in that or any one of our advanced technology programs. If that's something you're interested in, let some of the MicroStrategy team know, and we'd be more than happy to come out and visit you and support you in that project. So let's really talk about the MicroStrategy platform. There's a lot going on in the MicroStrategy platform. You chose us because we allow you to do the hard problems, right? Accessing large volumes of data, allow you to do complex calculations. Whether you're in healthcare and set theory is really important for you, right? Whether it's been able to deal with the speed of queries, smart SQL generation, there's a lot of richness and functionality. But what we heard from many of our customers is we need it to be much more dramatically easier to build and deploy applications. We need it to be much easier to consume and leverage applications so I can push those applications to the fringes of my organization and to my partners and customers. So what we're actually going to be providing in Dossier is a unified client experience. The ability for me to actually unify my client experience independent of the form factor, independent of whether I'm on Android or iOS, I'm running off a PC, I'm running off a Mac, I'm running in the web. I want to have a unified consumption experience that takes many of the metaphors that we're used to in our day-to-day life. My 5-year-old, I used to always say my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old, I got to remember, is an expert when it comes to the iPad. She can pick up that iPad, she can do Netflix, she can play her games, and she's a ninja. She didn't need to do any particular training courses for it other than watch her brother or sister. There's something natural around some of the experiences we bring. Now, obviously, that was the experience of my 5-year-old, but many of you today have a number of experiences you use because you're familiar with Netflix or Amazon.com, or you're familiar working with your iPad and your iBooks library. So we took insight and we took a look at saying, what are the gestures and what are the experiences that all of our users are used to in their day-to-day life, and how can we encompass that in to make the software self-evident? And that's what we're going to talk about with Dossier in a couple of minutes. Secondly, we obviously have a rich set of tooling in our product. We have a lot of tools in the platform. And what was consistent from many of our customers is like, you guys got a lot of tools. You know, it would be great if you could actually unify the tools, standardize the tool. Give me one tool to rule them all. And that's where we've actually come out with Workstation. So Workstation is designed to be a unified tool to allow you to build and deploy applications, manage them, build your content, manage systems, deploy servers, all in a single interface. And you'll see over the next while us releasing Workstation continue to provide that rich set of functionality in a much more modern user interface. And I'm super excited about what the team has been doing in the Workstation product. So there's 3 key vehicles that we've been looking at, 3 key items that I look at every single day when we wake up about how do I make MicroStrategy fundamentally better. And we take into account every piece of feedback we get from our customers. My daily triage meeting every single day, I go and look at the triages with the head of support. And we work through those issues and we bring people on site or whatever else we need to. The other thing I do beyond supporting our customers where you are today is how can I actually really provide a strength in agility for the users, agility for our business users, right? How do I make the software easy to consume, easy to build? How do I give you fast time to value? How do I make it a collaborative experience? So it's not just I analyze something and I send someone an email and it's dead to the system. How do I allow that? How do I allow a richness of discoverability so I can actually help recommend the right content? I want to do a pop quiz here. How many of you in the audience have a MicroStrategy system where you have just 10 documents in there? Exactly, no one. How about someone has a system with like 1,000 documents, maybe? A couple, not many. How about 10,000 or more documents? Okay, all hands go up. So MicroStrategy systems, analytic systems, we have a lot of content, right? We've all generated our own set of content, right? But what is the right content? What do I need to see? That's where discoverability comes in. And we're going to talk about that in the modern technologies we've taken to use to allow that for us. Secondarily is build and deployment. We want to support the IT folk in the room to actually allow you to build and deploy applications much faster. to allow you to create those data shapes and empower your users to also be successful in building that. We want to allow you to spend time in building and deploying applications rather than spending time upgrading and managing the systems, right? We want to ensure that you've actually got rich metadata and data governance. So as your company, you know what the truth is, but you can also learn from the insights that come from your business users that are very closely attached to their business. Fifthly, we really want to ensure that you've got that unified management environment. So it's very easy to manage rights, securities for all of your users. And we want to support the transformation of many of our customers as you go and take advantage of the cloud. Michael talked a little bit yesterday about MicroStrategy on AWS, our new offering. And so whether you want to take advantage of MicroStrategy's cloud, or whether you want to actually take advantage of our cloud provisioning technology and leverage it in your own environments, we want to empower that. Thirdly, and I'll talk about openness to the ecosystem. As much as at MicroStrategy we'd like to think the universe evolves around us, it's not true. It doesn't. Neither it does for any other software company, right? To be a good citizen, we need to support and integrate with the best of breed and best technologies that live in your organization. None of you in the room only have a single data source or a single system or a single application. All of you have multiple applications, multiple interfaces that you work with every single day. It's our duty to integrate and leverage every single one of those assets that exist in your organization so that you've got 360-degree transparency and visibility of what's happening in your organization. Equally, it's critical at MicroStrategy that you can actually take and leverage those MicroStrategy applications and leverage that content in the rest of your applications. At MicroStrategy over the last 2 years, we've taken a strategy of API first. So that allows us to make sure that we're able to deeply integrate with the ecosystem around you, as well as you to take advantage of what we built out. And I've got some good things to show in this area. So let's talk a little bit about Dossier and look at the core components of that. So many of you would be familiar with, obviously, libraries, the old classic library, and they had the Dewey Decimal System, and you had to find the books, right? And then we evolved, right? And we became used to environments like iBook, right? Or Kindle, right? Where I can, on my portable device, carry a library of content, right? I could search for it, I could find it, I could visually see exactly what I'm looking for, right? I could have, in the stores, I could have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, and it's available at a click of my fingers. So we equally understand that it's important to have a discoverable interface for discovering and searching and looking for the particular content you want, to use recommendations, to give you advice on what pieces of content, and for you to be able to quickly see the alerts, what's hot, what you should take a look at. We look at systems like Netflix and Prime Video and Amazon.com, and we look at some of the innovations that you're all familiar with on your day-to-day life, and how do we actually bring them into the business world. Now, we're not going to take away anything. All the things you see today, we're not going to take functionality away. You love web, you love folder browsing, that's fine, right? But we want to give you some interfaces, some modern interfaces that allow you to deploy that as well to your users, to allow them to have a dramatically better interface for browsing and working with MicroStrategy content and other related content. So that's for us the library. Secondarily is collaboration and sharing. So we were in the day where we used to email things around and that's how we shared. For many of you in the audience, it may take advantage of Salesforce.com and familiar with Chatter. Or as my development team does, we have discussions in Rally. Or maybe your organization is using Facebook at work, or Teams or Slack. So you've started to take advantage of some of those technologies, but we've been much more proficient with Twitter and Facebook in our day-to-day and home life. How can we allow rich contextual collaboration between users, whether you're the back-end user, right, in marketing and distribution at Loblaws, or you're the store manager right at the front? How can we support a collaboration of data, and not solely related to sales data, but all of the data and insight in your organization, so you can actually make real-time decisions? Thirdly, responsive design and a scalable deployment. Many of you in the room have said, look, we love what you've done with mobile, we love what you've done with web, but I really only want to build it once and deploy it everywhere, right? I want to understand what do I need to do to take advantage of it. we're super excited about the investment we've put into the responsive design for Dossier. This gives me the ability in Workstation to build an application and then able to responsively change depending on the form factor. It also allows you as the designer to actually interject and make some changes if you would like the behavior to be slightly different on a different form factor. Many of us think of responsive design as something that goes down. I go from a PC to a tablet to a phone, but responsive design also goes up. At MicroStrategy, we have video walls everywhere. Michael has been an advocate of death to drywall, and so we have analytics all around our organization, and how do I scale up as well? Thirdly is an intuitive navigation construct. So we literally looked through hundreds of customer applications, and I really appreciate the different applications from many of you in the room that we had a chance to review. And we looked at how much time and energy was put into building the navigation into your application, right? So we took a look at what were the best metaphors there. We also looked at metaphors from history and metaphors from other software that people use every day. And so we're launching in Dossier the table of contents. It's a vertical-based orientation that leverages some of those inklings that we have that we've grown up with. You know, we're familiar with textbooks at school. We're familiar with magazines. We're familiar with items that allow us very quickly to find a rich set of content and bring items together in a story form. Now, like all of the pieces of Dossier, what we want to do is make sure that if you want to see it, it's there in front of you. If you don't want to see it, you want to focus on the data, it's hidden away. So allowing you to maximize the amount of interface you have. So a lot of very intuitive navigations, table of contents, and others that we've been working on. Powerful hierarchies and text-based visualization. So one of the key elements that we've actually been investing in is thinking about filters. And when we took a look at many of the applications, some of our customers have built homegrown filters and SDK customizations because some of our filters didn't look so wonderful, and you wanted to have a lot more control over exactly what you want to expose to the user. So we've been making investments there specifically so that, like in other things, you're able to hide the filters when you don't want them or showcase them. But we understand filtering is also a visual art. If I'm selecting countries, let me select them on a map. If I'm selecting my profitable business units, let me see it on a pie chart, or let me see them location-wise, and allow me to select it visually. So whether I'm using a list filter or a visual filter like a map or a chart, allow that to be forward and front. Now, nothing we are going to do is taking away from the ability to use in-canvas selectors and in-canvas filtering, because we want to obviously honor all that investment. But we want to augment and allow you to dramatically do rich filtering at a single drag and drop, so any visualization itself can be a filter. Sixthly, for Dossier, and actually Workstation, is that it's all built on a new set of SDK. So for those of you in the room that are OEMs, right, we've listened to you and we've put a lot of energy here. So everything we've built out is built on a REST set of APIs. That's about getting our data into the system, getting data out to the system, and all the new interfaces are built that way. So if you see that I've got something in the product, then there's SDK to allow you to actually do that as well. And a very modern REST-based SDK API that allows me to do it in a very short amount of code. So that's the sixth key area. So why don't we actually go back and take a look at that content discovery. We're going to go and take a look at the Dossier library. So I'm going to come into the library and I'm going to log in as Tim Lang here. And you can see in the library I've got some visual representations here. I can see in my notification center I've got a series of notifications on cost or other items. I'm able to choose to sort by different things, so name, date added, updated, the person, like you'd be familiar with other software. I can mouse over an item and get some additional information on the particular item. You'll also see that one of the things important for us is scalability of design everywhere. And so the library itself is also scalable, and we take advantage of that hamburger control to actually work in the minimized form. Now, everything in the system is indexed, so it's absolutely easy and very fast to actually search across content. And here specifically, I'm looking at trade show analytics, and I'm going to take a look at a particular report. So very quickly I can find the piece of content that I want, and we'll see recommendation engine in a couple of minutes. So ability to very quickly find and identify the piece of content that I'm looking at, no different than I'm looking for a particular book in my system. We have uploaded and tested some of the largest metadata coming from our customers, and the response is very fast in that query performance. So everything is indexed and everything is fast. Let's now take a look at the table of contents. So like a book, I can bring table of contents up and I can choose to select the verse that I'm looking at. But I can take advantage of very core common paradigms I'm used to. If I want to navigate left and right on my PC, I can use my left and right arrows. Right? I'm in the web interface at the moment. Or I'm able to take the table of contents and click on it. Now I can also pass context from one element to another. And in this particular example, I clicked on the KPI card and it took me to a detailed page in the dossier. So I can have rich navigation built in very easily into the dossier without having to create a lot of complexity in terms of your ability to establish that. Like any other chart, I've got visibility on it, and I want to really showcase the filters. So the data set we're looking at is a set of trade show data. And why don't we actually go and select a date range? So what are the metaphors that we want to use and expose? So I'm not selecting from lists here, I'm selecting from visual filters. I'm going to look at specifically the European people that came from Europe. So why don't we go and select those? So I select in a map, because naturally if I want to look by country, I look at the data by country and I go and select the European region. So I'm going to make that selection. I can now pass in context. So I was filtered on Europe, right? I was filtered on that context, and now I'm going to go and take a look specifically at the trade show floor. So this is another visual representation. It's a trade show floor. And we've got live telemetry data that we're going to be looking at here. Now, one of the things we have in this interface is the ability for me to go through time. Let's look at history, and let's look at seeing what happens over time. I can see there's a clustering of people around a particular booth. Let's go and check it out. Now, I just don't want to select it. I'm actually going to write a note. This is where the European attendees are spending their time, and I think we should involve some folk in that. Now, I can take this point and I can actually create myself a permanent bookmark, because what I want to use that later on is to help me tell my story. So I created a bookmark. Now, obviously I've seen this analysis, and I'm actually going to send a note to Michael. And so I'm going to go and collaborate with Michael. I'm going to say, hey, Michael, this is where the Europeans are hanging out. I think we really should actually probably bring some people over here to kind of help them out. And right in the system, contextually, I selected a set of item. I'm able to communicate with Michael. Take a look. And I'm going to attach to Michael that bookmark that I created. And Michael can then take and use that, and he can include it in his own analysis or his own data set. So we've now communicated that. And let's just come back to the library. So I'm going to pretend to be Michael Saylor. I know I'm not. I sound a little different. And so we're going to go through on Michael's iPad and see what the experience for Michael looks like. So we're on Michael's iPad, and Michael gets a notification that Tim Lang sent him a message. And it takes him exactly in context to the dossier and the page he was looking at. You can also see at the top left-hand side it says Add to Library, and that dossier is now able to be added to Michael's library. Now Michael sees this, he sees the insight, and he's like, I need to get Renison and Gamble on this one, and I'm going to send them an email. He could have sent it through the system because they're also on it, but he did that. He chose to produce a PDF. In the background, it was still exporting, but still allowing me to actually work on the system. So I say, hey, Gamble, hey, Dave, we should really make sure that we actually have some folk around at this booth to help out the Europeans. I'm sure that they've got some questions. And so very quickly, we're able to communicate. In this example, you saw me communicating inside the system, But we know many of you in the audience have users that used to PDF and they like Excel outputs and they like all those other things. So we also want to make sure that we can tie into other collaboration mechanisms. Now, whether they're the native elements built into the iOS or into OS X or into PCs, or whether you're taking advantage of third-party messaging frameworks that we can also connect to, like Slack or Microsoft Teams or Facebook at Work or various other interfaces. So let's continue a little bit of navigation. Now, Michael really liked that dossier, right, of what we actually showed. And so you can actually go and take a look at other related items. This system, again, can have tens of thousands of items. And we want to look at other dossiers like this. And we also want to look at other things. In this particular example, Michael is looking at a report services document. So the library can contain VI-based documents as well as report services documents. And then we're able to see those in the library and discover the relevant content. Let's look a little bit beyond, obviously, that quick flow. And Michael is now off in customer meetings. Let's now just take a look at other elements of our mobile experience. Because as you see me going from mobile to going from the experience in web and going to experience in mobile, you're going to see a lot of consistency. And that's the key point of what we're really trying to provide here. Let's take a look at the mobile consumption experience. So I'm looking at a particular report here. I've got a sales report and I've got a grid. Now, I realize this one doesn't actually have a total on it, so I'm actually wanting to show total on it. And I want to actually sort the revenue in a descending order. So I can very quickly do that. We take advantage of things like long taps on the tablet devices, and very quickly I can do that. I've got a set of values. I can swipe naturally, and it's going to reorder the chart for me, right? I want to do a multi-select, allow me to choose a selector object and actually select the charts that I'm interested in looking at. I can make the selection, and then the chart itself can pivot for me. And I can actually close this down and come back to the original front page of my dashboard, and you can see it responds. Now I can always go back to the previous behavior. Now all of the key navigation that you'd want to do, I can zoom on the map. I may want to select California and then have the data respond to me appropriately. So you see the ability for me to actually, even in my web interfaces, to be able to react with the content, use it in a very visual metaphor. I can select from the chapter and verse and look at the content, but I can easily natively just swipe to the next page, chapter and verse, swiping through the content to find what I'm looking at. So this is a rich dashboard example with a lot of, we've got a network diagram, and you can choose the specific diagram you're looking at. But we're also fully responsive, so we actually take advantage of responsive in the way we design our interfaces for what we've actually been building with Dossier. So you saw a very quick example of me actually going and showing the workflow of someone finding a piece of information, sharing, collaborating, telling a story, sharing with multiple users and showing insight, right, in a web environment and in the mobile environment. Let's actually go and show you the magic underneath this in terms of how we actually build it, because that's what's really going to differentiate what we're talking about here. And I'm going to introduce you to Workstation. 6 key elements of Workstation, and one of them is common that I talked a little bit about before. First is the ability to create and distribute content. So this is the ability for you to design content in the Workstation environment, whether on Mac environment or whether you're in a Windows environment. Now I know many of you are going to say, what about the web? Can't I build stuff on the web? And says, yes, you'll be able to build stuff on the web. The designer environment you see here is also available in the web interface for many of you that do that. But if you spend multiple hours a day building content and sharing and collaborating and architecting content, having a rich desktop environment is very powerful and gives you a greater speed and productivity. So we really wanted to focus on that. So allow you to create and develop content. Secondly, the ability to connect, prepare and model data. So many of you in the room are familiar with working with our architect tools or working with, say, data import. So what we wanted to do was take the best of breed. What was the richness of functionality that we had in architect, and what is the power and simplicity that we had in data import? And how do we bring those together? And I'll show you some great examples of what we're doing there. Thirdly is user and group management. So within the interface, being able to manage your groups, manage users, connecting up to security systems, right? So making it very quickly for me to build an application, deploy, and add 10, 100 users or whatever you want. Thirdly, connect and search across multiple environments. So many of you in your room ask me multiple times, how do I work across projects? How can I work across systems, right? Our company has got 20 MicroStrategy systems. How can I bring that together? Within Workstation, you'll be access across multiple projects of content and multiple systems. So it's super exciting, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud. Thirdly is to manage and create environments. From this interface, you're able to create and manage your environments, and you can spin up environments in cloud. Whether you're using MicroStrategy Cloud or MicroStrategy on AWS, you'll be able to spin up those environments from this interface. You'll be able to manage those environments from the interface. Now, there's also a rich SDK behind that, right? And that SDK allows you to connect it up with your own automation systems. Now, obviously, the next question you're going to say, but oh, Tim, I don't want my users spinning up in a new environment, AWS. Well, of course, there's access controls so we can restrict or provide access to that. But we want to make it very easy for you to do that. We want to give you the ability very quickly, if you're taking advantage of the cloud infrastructure, to actually give you way more power. I need a lot of power on Monday morning. Give me more power. I need to get one of those X1 boxes they have at Amazon. And the last point, obviously, is the SDK. And I'm going to refer to it a couple of times today, because that's not solely for our OEMs. Many of you in your organizations can benefit from actually taking some of the content, the data model, the single source of the truth that you've built in MicroStrategy and push it through multiple other applications, whether they're websites or other client or field-facing applications. You can do that leveraging the rich set of SDKs, and I will go through that with you in a couple of minutes. So when we think about data and we think about the journey many of our customers have been on, one of the reasons you've chosen MicroStrategy is to give you a single source of the truth. Many of you have had problems in departments and areas where people have grabbed data from Excel or other sources and come to meetings with, here's what sales is, or here's what loss was, or here's the ratio, and the numbers have conflicted or been wrong. And I see a lot of nodding heads in the audience. So we want to make it very easy for you to also help provide agility in your organization, right? Allow people to upload data and work with it. But it's really important for your users to know what is certified and governed by the organization and what are the items that have not yet gone through that approval process. And so you'll be able to designate content and data sources that are marked as trusted, and this is a right that's able to be set in the system. It's a new right that we've got in the system, because in some cases it may be someone from IT that does that, but in many cases it's going to be a data steward in the business to be responsible for the certification of a given set of content, and that was one of the things that many of our customers articulated on Tuesday at the Customer Council. Thirdly, I started off earlier today when I was talking about the vast volumes of data we all deal with, the amount of telemetry we generate. In the petabyte ranges. And so, how much data can we currently hold in the iServer, right? We've got many of our customers that are running multiple terabytes of RAM on their iServers. But we want to also give the ability to actually run that across multiple nodes. And in the demonstration I'm going to show you how we can actually do that. So allow you to create a single schema that actually allows you to keep some data very hot on the iServer, push data out to a series of nodes. Maybe you're running 100 nodes that each have 256 gig of RAM, and then also access in a single schema the underlying data that might be fed from your Hadoop data lake, but it have a single model to support that navigation. Thirdly, and this is an important point, the ability for me to actually bring together the data from what my governed schema is, that's built and deployed and designed by IT, and bring it together with some of the insight that comes from my business users. Part of my schema is governed and locked off, but they give me the ability to actually bring those together. Now, if there's a set of content that some of users are finding useful, IT can actually see what's happening in the system, and then we can either remap it to the schema or move the data. So allow a much stronger collaboration. Now, when you also have collaboration built into the experience of the client with Dossier and into the design surface with Workstation, we're going to allow a much dramatic improvement in the speed of which the IT team, the BI team, and the business users can actually talk and collaborate on how to actually solve real business problems in their organization. So let's actually go through an example of connecting up to some data. So I talked a little bit about the trade show example, and we're going to go and do that. So in this particular example, I'm actually going to bring data from a non-SQL database. I'm going to bring data from a Kafka real-time stream. I'm going to bring some data from some files. I'm going to bring some data from MySQL. Okay? So I'm going to bring all of those, and I'm going to publish a model, and then we're going to do some reporting on it. Okay? Super excited about this. So a couple of notes here. So this is the current development build of the interface. So we've got a little bit of tweaking we're doing on the user interface that I'm working with our chief designer and my head of this particular project. But you'll get a good feeling of kind of where we're going. So, oops, I got ahead of myself. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. We'll see that very shortly. What I want to show quickly is actually that deployment. So the first thing that's actually important to me is I got a brand new system, I got a MicroStrategy system, and then what I actually want to do is I want to add some new users. Okay, so from the system we're going to add some users, we've got some analysts, and we want to deploy Workstation to them. So everyone will receive an email, and they click on the email, they'll download Workstation, and in that email is a configuration link that allows that environment to be configured to your corporate environment. Okay? So in a single click, I was able to configure that. All the settings, the configuration settings, I didn't have to worry about. It was automated for me. Now, this is fine. This is one system. I'm connected to my on-prem environment. That's fine. But what if I actually want to connect to a cloud environment or multiple environments? Well, I can very quickly click on Create Cloud Environment. I can pass the name of the environment, and it's going to spin that environment. Typically, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to spin up an environment for you in the cloud. So whether that cloud environment is running in the MicroStrategy cloud or MicroStrategy on AWS, Workstation will be able to be connected to that. And in this case, we're authenticated because Sam logged in. So let's take a look at the different assets we actually have in the organization. So I'm able to, in this interface, also look at my library. And in that example, like the other library, you saw a certain amount of content. Equally, you can actually see content coming from multiple systems. So I'm not just talking multiple projects. I'm actually talking multiple systems. And it's indexed. And it's fast, and allows me to look at stuff like, let's look by date modified, let's look at last updated. So I'm able to actually explore and look at the particular piece of content. I've got a visual view in this case. I've got a list view, right? I even have a folder view for people that love folders. Not a lot of claps there. So let's take a look at the search interface. So here I'm able to search for content, and again, very fast. And again, in our systems, we've taken some of the largest set of your metadata and actually used that. In this example, I launched the particular dossier, and I can bring it up in my system. So we also support the folder view, so here's the folder view. But again, you'll also note that I've got multiple systems and multiple projects here. So I can traverse those. So I could either do it in smart folders, as you saw before, or I can do it in a folder view. And I know all of you have built folder hierarchies. We've got our fair share of them at MicroStrategy. But this fundamentally transforms my experience. How many of you have tried to find something in your system? Hands up. Tried to find. The rest that don't have their hands up are lying. Okay? So we always try and find it. So what is the byproduct when we can't find something? We go and create something new, right? Or we modify something. So that leads to a proliferation of content, right? So the ability to have a strong search interface allows us to find exactly what we're looking at. So let's now look at data sets. So again, in this particular case, I've got data sets coming from multiple systems and multiple projects. And in exactly the same way I can do that. At MicroStrategy, everything in our system is an object. And every object is indexed. And every object is searchable. A data set is just one of those objects, just like a dossier was. And I can go and search it. So now actually, let's go and build that data set up. Okay? Now you're all excited about it. And I mucked up originally. So let's go look at data management, and we're going to go and create that data set that I talked to you a couple of minutes ago. So a very simple interface that you'd be familiar with other smart folders. I click on the link, and I want to create a new data set. And I'm going to enlarge this window to full frame. So I'm going to grab a Kafka feed. So I'm going to grab the stream. It's a live stream coming in, and I've got access to a series of rows as they come in. Live Kafka stream. Now, that's the live data, right, coming in now. I also have historical data that's in a MongoDB non-SQL source, and I want to take a look at that. And I've got 1.824 billion rows of data in there. And I want to grab that data, and I want to drag that across, okay? So it's the same source. I've got the history, and I've got the real-time feed, and I can consume those together as the system goes on. So I've got my stream in, okay? We now want to actually bring some additional data in. So we all attend trade shows. There's a registration system we had, okay? You registered for MicroStrategy World, okay? It generated a file. So why don't we grab the file for those that came in from North America. So on my file system, I had a file. Now, we leverage modern metaphors. I just want to drag it across. Let me drag it into my application. And I drag that file into the application. And you can see here, we preview exactly the content there. We also let you know from our discoverability, there's other related content that already exists in the system, right? How many times have you been there and you've uploaded things multiple times when it actually already exists, right? So really give you those visual cues. Now, what you're going to see in this interface is that as we model, as we make selection, we change and modify the information. We want to make sure we give you the visual cues so you understand exactly the changes you make. Traditionally, in our tools like Architect, we would do a model, we'd create a connection, and then we'd have to save it, publish it, and then we'd have to go in to build a report and then realize we made a mistake. Okay? So we really want to provide that interaction as we look at the pieces of content. So I'm now going to go on my third part of the activity. Now, how do I bring that data together? I've got a whole heap of badge data. Well, I would want to connect them together. So we would like to join them, right? And I'm going to go through a couple of examples of how some of our joining interface happens. So as I click on that data set again, and on that group, it's actually going to recommend, do you want to union the tables, okay? And I'm going to union all 4 of those tables, right? And by selecting on that, which is the recommendation, I've just now created a union on that data set. I don't need to be a rocket scientist. I can go and do it. Not sure my 5-year-old could do it, but it's getting close. Okay, now let's look at some of the geographic data, right? And in MySQL, I had location data, right? Which I had cities and states. So why don't we actually bring that together? Now, there's a correlation between cities and states. So if I click on the table, I can see I had 4 columns and 4 columns. So let's take a look. And it's going to recommend a join. Visually, it shows me what's going to happen. It shows me maybe I should be looking at an inner join. Why don't I preview the data and see what it looks like? Here's what the data looks like. Let me actually match together state by state, and I can see it. It also shows me the number of columns. It's going to go from 2 and 4 columns to 6 columns, right? It'll also tell me if there's any rows that are going to be dropped. So maybe I'm dropping too many rows, and I realize I need to do an outer join, I need to do a left join or a right join. Visually, I see that. Okay? So now I've actually gone from 4 and 2 to 6. Okay? Now, there's an overlap here. I need to make some cleanup of the data. So how do we go and do that? Well, why don't we actually start our wrangling process and clean up some of those data that we saw? So I see that I've got state 1, don't need it, going to delete it. Okay? Okay, I've got country. I can see a pictorial representation of the cardinality of the country. Yeah, but I'd like to see it on a map. And I'd like to also remove the unknown, okay? It's a very powerful interface. We are taking advantage of the different visualization techniques we have so that we are choosing the right variant to allow you to select things in the most logical way. This particular case, I'm actually wanting to actually create a unique ID of the user for linking later on, and I can actually see I could split. The recommendation engine there recommended that I want to do a split on email, and then I chose to delete the @microstrategy.com or the @email.com. So it very quickly shaped the data that I wanted. I shaped the badge data. I've got the feed coming in from real-time and non-SQL source. I got my location data in. I combine the tables together, and I'm ready to go to the races. Okay? Now, for some of you, you don't need to go any further. You can just publish. Others of you that want to take advantage of rich modeling and to make some changes in the way the model looks at it and the tables look like, you can go on to the next step and actually look at the relationship. So we're going to proceed to modeling in this case. In the interface, I can see those three pieces. I've got the stream and the batch data, I've got the badge data, and I've got the others. And I can see the attributes and the metrics that have been dynamically generated. I can go and take an attribute and make it a metric, right, by just a single drag and drop relationship. And I can go and inspect all of my sets. I can see the linking that's occurring on all of these items as I go through. But equally, I can just click on it. Let me look at that data. Let me see exactly what it is. Let me make the changes in the hierarchies or changes in the way the model works so the numbers will look differently or the calculations will look differently. So I'm able to very quickly, in the interface, model data. Now, whether I'm dealing with a small number of cases, tables, and cases like this, or whether I'm dealing with tens of thousands, we've built the interface to be scalable to support all your needs, including list views, which I'm not showing in this particular example. So we now want to publish the data set, okay? And we want to do it fast. We've got a lot of data. We want to do it fast, right? But we also want to not just be fast in the generation. It's great that I can generate stuff fast, but I also want to make sure this cube is going to perform super fast, right? So we're going to go and publish this, and we're going to publish this across multiple machines, multiple nodes. So I go publish, I name it. We're going to publish it to an in-memory cluster. And you can go and see now it's actually going to publish it to 30 nodes, okay, each of which have got 16 cores. So in a couple of minutes, it's published a data set out to the set. So the ability in parallel to publish across multiple cores, multiple nodes, across multiple machines, and publish my data so I can then use and consume it. Now in this example, I'm back at the interface, okay? The Workstation interface allows me to browse and explore those objects, and I just created another data set. So if I actually want to build a set of content, what would I expect I want to do? I can double click on this cube and make changes and modify it, but I can just use it as a reference point and I just want to build a report. So that's exactly what I'm going to go and do. I'm in the Dossier authoring environment and I'm going to go and do exactly that. I click on create a new report, as simple as that, okay? So this is the editor. So who in the room has used Visual Insight or Desktop? Okay, yep, quite a number of you. This interface is not fundamentally different. There's a lot of similarities you see because we're leveraging exactly the same underlying tech stack, right? You're able to actually take and inhale every single VI dashboard that you have or desktop MSTR file you have into this designer, okay? So in this particular example, I can see the data model we've defined and I could use the usual drag and drop. But I said we want to make your life easier to build content, okay? And we talked at the beginning of today about how language helped the Homo sapiens really tell stories and be successful. Well, language equally allows me to create content. The key at MicroStrategy that's different than many of our competition is the richness of our metadata. But we weren't really using our metadata as much as we could in the past. And so we've got a rich index that's happening here on our data sets, and that allows me to use it in natural language processing. So why don't we take a look at that? So we've got a new icon here on the top right-hand side, and I click on the icon, and it allows me to actually, in textual form, ask a question. So total booth visits, okay? And you can see it starts, as I start typing, it starts prompting answers, and bang, in that interface, it's giving you the values. I want to look at my total exhibitors, and I also want to look at the total attendees. So very quickly, in natural language, I was able to type things and select the values that are most relevant based on the data I have and the metadata that we have in the system. Now, these are very simple examples, and in these examples, I've actually got, you know, a number, a title, and a chart, okay? What about more complex examples, like a map or something like that? Well, let's go and take a look at how the system handles that. So what I'm looking here is booth visits and attendees by country of origin. Remember that chart I had that gives me the ability to see where people came from? And bang, it's created that chart. It automatically creates... Thanks. It automatically creates a chart, but like everything in the product, if I want to make modifications to formatting, if I want to make changes to titles, I can do it quickly. In that example, you saw I did it. But you can see it's got all the right attributes on it, it's loaded all of those in, it's created the layer. All of that is changeable and modifiable by you. But very quickly, I can get started in my exploration. So I've got the front page of my dashboard, feel pretty good about that. And I want to actually do some more advanced functionality. Now, at the heart of MicroStrategy, we've got many of our customers in the insurance business, healthcare, banking, and financing. And they take advantage of our platform to do some really rich set analysis, right? Some of our custom, partners and customers like Premier Health and many others. And for them, the platform has been very powerful. But they've really been asking, can you bring more of this into the interface? We want to get that into VI. We want to allow me to expose more sets and ask me to ask much more complex and or questions on the data sets I want to visualize. And we're going to show you how we go and do that. So in this example here, we want to edit the filter on this one, and we want to add a new qualification. So in this particular example, I'm actually looking at the action types, and I'm made to go and select some of the actions that I want. So at the event here, you're actually, as you go and do different things, you scan a badge, all those things, they're different actions. Now, in the interface, you could select from a list, but search is also relevant absolutely everywhere in everything we do. Let me see what I selected, and let me actually then come back and search. If you've ever tried to do this in Excel where I'm searching and selecting, so it's not possible. Right? So we really want to make it very easy for you to do it. Now I want to grab the users, because I want to create a set of the users that had that particular, those particular actions. And I want to apply this qualification. So very quickly, in my interface, I'm able to set that qualification. Now this is a simple one. I could have had an and an or and I could go on crazy, right? And I know my health customers are going to go and do a lot of that. So we created that qualification. I could exit out that qualification. I could go back to the original form or whatever I want to do. So take advantage of advanced filtering right within the interface. So I built a dossier. I built it very quickly off a data set that I just created. But there's other content in the system. Remember I talked about there being tens of thousands of other pieces of content? So why don't I rest on the shoulders of giants and actually go and see what else in the system I may want to bring into my dossier that someone else has actually built. Let's go and do that. So we're going to come back to Workstation, and I'm going to actually go and look at the other dossiers, and I can either browse, but maybe I've got a lot of them, or I can go and search, and I'm looking at trade show. And based on the top hits, I can actually see there's a trade show detailed dossier that was created. And we're going to grab that. And what would I expect to be able to do? I expect just to drag and drop it onto the canvas. So very quickly I was able to do that. I'm able to reorientate content. Maybe some stuff was in one chapter, I want to put it in the next. Right? I want to retitle things. That piece of content that I built was different. So here's where you saw the table of contents before, allows me to create and shape that set of content. Filter and filter conditions can be applied at the page level, at the chapter level, as well as the overall dossier level. And again, in this example, at the very end, I created a new chapter. I'm creating some additional content. You can go ad nauseum through content. So very quickly, I built content. I used natural language. I was able to bring some content from another dossier that another user put together. And I want to now continue my journey. Now, creating great defaults is really important. And one of the feedbacks I've had from many customers through the interviews we did in the upgrade validation program was really for us to work on our defaults and make the defaults so out of the box things look beautiful and I don't have to spend a huge amount of time making changes. So we took that to heart. And one of the things we were looking at is how do we really visualize, how do we do our charts, and how can we make the colors and the fonts and everything much better? And so we really took a hard look at some of our default color palettes. So I thought I'd show you that. So out of the box is a broad set of new color palettes. And we've spent a lot of time as well looking at how we actually build those color palettes specifically. The top 3 of them are designed specifically for those that are actually colorblind. Right? And so we've actually really taken in and done all of our testing to support that. Many of you today come from government agencies with 508, and that's an important item. Now, you can go and build your custom palette if you like. You can go and build a custom palette if you're Coca-Cola or you're FedEx or you're one of our customers. Okay? But how did we get inspiration for our color palettes? Well, the human eye is tuned to see beauty in nature. We see the natural colors that exist. And so when we were thinking about this, we actually said, well, let's take a look at nature. So a number of these photos were taken from some of the folk in technology, and you can actually see that we pulled natural colors. We grabbed the spectrums that are available in these photos, and mathematically we did the separation on the color bands to give you natural separation on every single band. And there's some very beautiful colors that you have exposable to you here. And so here's some of the new palettes. These palettes can be in short form if you've got 4 sets of values, or they can be long form if you've got much larger range of data sets. So very great set of colors, and a whole heap of other things we're doing around fantastic defaults. Great. Now, from an authoring perspective, right, I'm in the content, I'm in the tool, and I want to interact with content, right? How do we actually do stuff? How do I deal with much larger volumes of data? How do I deal with thousands or tens of thousands of data points? And how do I deal with data points that change over time? So let's show you a couple of examples of that. So here's a chart, and you can see in this particular chart, it's not static, I can play it, and you can see over time how that data responds. Now we can see a lot of the North Americans that happen to be in red are attending the trade show a little bit late. I think they're going around and grabbing the swag. That's what I'm thinking, okay? But I equally see the Europeans here are actually spending more time at the booth. So visually, I selected and lassoed the content, and then I filtered on Europeans in the controller on the right-hand side. So I identified from a very large set of data over a period of time the segment of data that I really want to focus on, and then I actually select it down to what I want. Now, you saw at the beginning of the presentation the library had like fancy photos and pictures of dossiers, and you say, that doesn't look like MicroStrategy. No, you can have any picture you want as the cover page of a dossier. But even more powerful than that is how about we have a real KPI? So from the dossier, I want to choose a particular KPI and make it my KPI card for my front page of the dossier. So every time I look at it and I'm browsing for it, I see it, and I see the updated value, and I go and click on it. Okay, so let's actually go and do that. This is very simple, so it's going to go by pretty quickly. So I'm back in my tool, and I go set as cover page. Not very hard, okay? You can see on the top left-hand side that the KPI, the title page of the dossier is changed to that chart. And you'll see next time when we bring up this dossier that has been modified. Now, we talked about certification before. We talked about you having governed content. We talked about the data stewards in the room that certify and sign off a report is good to go. Whether that's our CFO signing off the financial reports for us, right? or whether it's the support team validating the cases, right? It's really critical that we can actually go and do that. Well, how do we actually go and certify content? Now, we've got this new role that gives me the ability to certify if I have access to do so. And because I have the access right and I have the data point, every piece of content is tagged so I can search for it. Only show me the certified content, right? Maybe in IT, I want to search for all the non-certified content that has a lot of usage, or the non-certified content that has usage by our executives, right? Those kind of things. So let's look at the certification process. Again, it's very quick because we take in the common frameworks that you'd want. I've got my trade show analysis, and at the very bottom here, I've got my little box that says Certified Dossier, and I can click on OK. Now, one of the things I said at the beginning of the session, and I repeated multiple times, is we built everything on SDK. And the reason why that's important is the ability to certify something is also an SDK call. So if you want to connect up to your BPM or other processes or an approval process to run through certification, you can. Okay? You upload the data warehouse, you make a change, you run a series of tests, and then you want to certify it, you can do that as well. So this is through the user interface, the ability to go and do that. Object properties. So one of the things we actually talk about in MicroStrategy is the ability that everything is an object. So everything has a set of properties on it, and we can use the properties in a different way. But we want to provide a common way to manage objects. I know that if on my Mac or my PC and I double-click on a PowerPoint, it's going to open. Or if I could do Control-I, it's going to give me the settings of it. So how do we leverage those common metaphors to allow me to explore and set appropriate rights? And you're going to see two examples of that. So let's come back to the environment. You can see the KPI card there. And let's get information. So I could do the right-click or Control-I. I can actually even select multiple objects and do that. I can see the properties and the key information, but I can also make changes to security if I had the rights to. And obviously, you want to give this Tim Lang guy full access. But maybe Andrew Smith is just going to have read access. So we're going to do that for view access, which is what we're going to give to Andrew. So we've made the changes we wanted. We've taken a look at it, and there's another very special one I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. So we've got the dossier. I've built it, combined content, leverages a lot of data, and I'm going to publish it. The advantage of publishing the dossier is it allows a single dossier to have different views. So when I actually publish this dossier and I come into it, I can have my filter criteria, my views. Okay? When Andy comes into it, he's going to look at the platform's view. When Chris comes in, he's going to look at clients and tools. Right? When Sindipto is going to come in, he's going to look at data. Right? So each of us can come into our own views and filters. Many times, in the absence of that, many of us have gone and done something like, let's save as and call it Tim version 1, Tim version 2, Tim version 3, Tim version 3 final. Who in the room has done that sometimes? Yes, quite a lot of them. So the publishing process allows us to actually use the filters and all of those other things exposed to every single user in the publishing process. So let's now go and take this dossier and choose to share it. So the sharing is very easy. I choose to publish it, and I'm going to inject this dossier into a number of people's folders. I can be very specific. I'm going to send it to myself. I'm going to send it to Andrew Smith, right? I can send it to a group, all employees, all customers. So we suck from the metadata of all the users and objects and allow me to share that, and that's now going to fit in all of your dossiers. A modern, clean user interface to allow you to share. Now, if I was in the software, I would get notification, right? I can use email, right? I can use all of those communication mechanisms to let someone know that they've got a new dossier. So we've now published the dossier. Now, sometimes you make mistakes, right? You build something and then you made some modifications and it's like, it's not like it used to be, right? And so you kind of want to go back to an old version, right? And how do we go back to old versions today? Well, hopefully I stored Tim version 36. And I can go back to Tim version 36 and hopefully it's got the change in it. I believe there's a better way of doing that. So remember I showed you the objects, get information, version history right there. So in the system, you can specify the amount of version history you want, click on it, and restore the dashboard I want. So fantastic. That's going to be a huge productivity gain. It allows you to do some testing out of ideas and revert back to a previous version and publish that to users. So a super great feature that I'm excited about. Okay, so we've gone through Dossier. We've gone through Workstation. But there's more. And so I've got to watch my time. So I want to talk about how we're open to the ecosystem. And I started off by really talking about SDK. So all of you have data that we want to leverage. But equally, you all want to be able to take advantage of the MicroStrategy asset that you get the most out of it. You want to integrate the data into your own application. You don't want to have to build other things that actually query the data and create the models for some other application if you can just leverage what you've actually built in MicroStrategy. So we're going to show you what we've done and what a number of partners have done to take advantage of this SDK in the last 12 months. Here's my Uber SDK diagram, and literally this has been growing, right? It's grown slightly more since Michael showed his. So we've got a series of new REST-based interfaces, right? We've got a JSON data API that allows me to consume data from reports and cubes, right? It allows me to apply filters and paging of the data set, right? So when we launched this out in 10.5, we had a huge number of OEMs take advantage of it. It's fantastic if you want to take advantage of data in JSON format that you can take advantage of. Push API. We have partners that are able to push data and data sets into MicroStrategy. Maybe you've got a legacy system and you want to push data in. Or I've got a real-time feed and I want to push that in. So the push API is fantastic for doing that. And we've got a number of leading data partners that are doing that. The data connector API, maybe I've got a custom system, an old system, and I want to plug that into MicroStrategy so it feels like a native data connection into my application. And all of my users can access it no different than it's another data source like Oracle or something like that. Thirdly is the Web SDK, and many of you use that today and take advantage of that SDK and our mobile SDK. Our visualization API is fantastic, right? The ability for me to create D3 visualizations and customize exactly how it's going to work and feel and interact in Visual Insight and Dossier. The JavaScript API, that's one of the things I'm really proud of in 10.7, right? The team worked really hard on that. So the ability to embed in a single line of script, div in content from MicroStrategy into your own applications, super powerful. And the platform SDK. We talked about, as we did Secure Cloud, and the ability to provision, ability to generate objects, right? We want to have the platform SDK that allows you to do many of these functions. If you'd like to, you can through code, generate an environment in Secure Cloud in our offering, or in the MicroStrategy on AWS offering through SDK. So for those of you in the room at OEMs, a lot of great opportunity. But many of our large customers, you have teams and you want to automate as well. And you want to take advantage of this. And these SDKs and APIs are fantastic. Through these interfaces, we're going to connect with many companies, right? You know, leveraging big data deployments and connecting up to like MapR and Hortonworks and Cloudera, right? Push API with Talent and MuleSoft and D3 plugins, you know, with narrative science, right? Our web SDKs and all sorts of other APIs. You know, we've got some great integrations. Some people showed at the event today Alexa integrations. We've got 3 or 4 of those at MicroStrategy using the JSON data API. So openness is important for us to consume and leverage the data in your systems and your systems themselves, but also for you to leverage MicroStrategy. So one of those is using the visualization SDK, and this was actually a project done by one of my software engineers and test, and it didn't actually take an incredible amount of time, actually. It was done a relatively short period of time, but you can actually see in this SDK that I can actually, I've copied this chart. I'm going to go and grab the narrative science D3 plugin we've got here, and you can see that's automatically returning to me values. But built into the SDK is the ability for you to define hot zones and to define settings And that is all then native in the interface. So when I actually go into the interface here, I can actually look at the narrative science, and I can choose the type of what I'm looking at, the verbosity of what I'm looking at, and all of these individual items, each of those containers is all able to be set. You can build any visualization you can imagine and have it hooked up to MicroStrategy so the hot zones work seamlessly every time. Mapbox is another great partner we've been working with, right? They're very strong in the GIS space, and they leveraged our visualization SDK. They'd worked with many other vendors, and they said ours was the fastest they were able to integrate with because the richness and openness of our visualization SDK. And they've done some amazing things with what we've been able to do together with those guys. And here's an example actually built into a dossier that you can actually see how we pass data forward and backward from MicroStrategy to Mapbox. As I zoom in further and further, and I look at New York, and then I'm actually looking at materializing buildings, and I'm actually able to generate data because of that. So a lot of richness in terms of what you can do in the APIs. We've got partners like Magnitude that are also a sponsor here at MicroStrategy World and have taken advantage of some of our Data Connector SDK. They've got a packaged solution, and they released a packaged solution around Salesforce at the conference. They're one of the leading providers of integration in with Oracle eBusiness and SAP and many others. And they're going to be bringing more solutions to market, leveraging the MicroStrategy platform, and they're going to take advantage of a number of these SDKs. And my team is working very closely with Magnitude in this activity. We got customers like Paxata that use that new push API. So they are able to work and prepare data in their data preparation tool and actually push it to MicroStrategy. So I've got a little video here showing us in the Paxata interface. So they're actually going and cleaning up some models and shaping the data and seeing that it's all exactly what they want. And they're now going to push that data to MicroStrategy. So they go through their process, select the values, set the destination as MicroStrategy, and save it, and go and export it out. Now I can come into MicroStrategy, refresh, and now I can see very clearly here that I've pushed that data set in MicroStrategy and I have all the usual drag and drop functionality because they took advantage of the push API, and you're seeing some standard out-of-the-box functionality here now. So the JavaScript API is another great, is the example I talked about as well. This is a newspaper example, right? And so obviously I can show a chart. I can show data elements. I can actually page from one page to another, one chapter to another. I can share context. I can communicate between the portlets. I've got a lot of richness in what I can do, and it's really just a couple lines of code, right? And when we look at some of the amazing applications many of our customers have done as you've come through the Tyson office in the last year, right? And you've shown me it's really big and complex and all this code, and we're super excited that many of you are going to get to take advantage of that. So all of our current SDKs we're going to support, and we'll support for a very long time. And we want all of your applications to work. But we've got the next generation of SDKs for your engineers to take advantage of and plug MicroStrategy everywhere in your organization, or leverage all the assets of your organization into MicroStrategy. This is a topic I'm really passionate about. And why it's important is some of the things that you saw today were using examples of this. The recommendation engine. I can recommend content based on people that are close to me, based on the metadata. I know that this report is similar to this report. The metadata in there is similar. The content, the cube, those things are similar. And we get that information, right, leveraging our new platform analytics functionality. In a system, we actually go and pull a lot of data. And in this new framework, we're actually going to be eventing more data on users, right? So that Tim logs into this report, he looks at this, he drills on Usher sales in Germany, he exports the report out. So a lot of that telemetry historically was not as rich, but often it's dead because we just use it in Enterprise Manager. Now, Enterprise Manager is not going away from all of the content you've taken and leveraged today will be fully available in Platform Analytics. But that information can be used for not just not just visibility, right, for IT, but also to make smart recommendations. Maybe I can actually pre-cache the report because I know on Mondays Tim always takes this particular drill path. Maybe I can actually make recommendations because I know that people who are in the CXOs always look at this particular navigation path, or I should pre-cache that set of content for them. So platform analytics is going to have a rich set of telemetry that allows us to do many things. Whether it's telemetry generated from the PC, from the clients. Would you like to know what OS your users were using on their Macs and their Android devices, what version of Windows that they're using, right? How much time are they spending in the product? Where are they clicking? You've improved the dashboard. Did I get more click-through on it? Click streaming, all of those kind of things. It allows us to do phone home and case management. Hand up who in the room has been asked to provide log files and core dumps and things like that, okay? There's hands. And so we want to make it much easier for us to better communicate together, for you to share your settings. And not just solely for us to help you in the support, but for the IT people in the room, for you to better support all of your users in the organization. And Andy and some of the team have got a topic on this topic specifically at the event. Now we talk about the health of the system. And with the next generation for us of health check, we want to allow you to kind of monitor the system, the user experience, the performance, right? Notifications, what's happening in memory, how do I swap things in and out, right? What are the actions I need to take? We've got a lot of throughput at the moment. I don't have enough capacity. We should actually ramp up the machine we're running. Let's go from 128 gig of RAM to 256, right? That's double the number of CPUs. Allow me to take some of those actions. Right? What are the key recommendations? What are the cubes I should actually pull out of memory? Right? What are the ones I should actually cube? What do I actually need to do? How do I actually forecast? Right? The health of my applications that are actually being actively used. We went through an audit at MicroStrategy, and we did both a manual and an automated audit. And in the manual audit, it took a long time, and we weren't quite sure exactly the pieces. The automated audit was fantastic. We saw exactly what was used, where the problems were, and we've made some dramatic cleanups in our own Aqueduct environment because we started to take and leverage some of this tooling. And thirdly, what's happening with my machine health? I've got some nodes that have problems. Let me take care of them. Those kind of interfaces. And last of all, system health. So a lot of improvements across the platform in terms of what we've actually been doing in MicroStrategy. Whether you're in IT, whether you're an analyst, whether you're a business user, we want to make the paradigms very easy for you to build and deploy applications, seamless of form factor, right? We want to honor and protect all of the assets you built, whether they're report services, documents, VI documents, right? The rich metadata you've built, right? But we want you allowed to build it dramatically faster. So at this event, we over the last couple of days, we've been running Usher. All of you have got Usher badges. It's how you sign into the event. And so we've collected a little bit of telemetry. We've just like at the trade show example I gave, we had beacons around. So I thought I'd share some of the data. This data came out from last night. But we can see that there was a lot of users, a lot of people spent time in the exhibit hall. It's actually the top place where many of you spent time, followed by Potomac Room. We can see the enterprise-ready data discovery was actually the most well-attended track. So we can see that, and we can see increasing the impact and adoption of analytics has been the second. So we were able to generate real telemetry, and for many of our customers in the room, whether you're a shipping line, different frame points, there's an advantage of taking access to data. Why don't we just pop across to my iPad over here, if we can. Good. Okay. So there was a couple of questions I asked the audience, and if you want to answer and you haven't already answered, just go into the badge application. There's the inbox. You can scroll down on the inbox, and it will feed any questions you may not have answered. And if you want to see some of the questions you have already answered, you can see those in the recent. But I can actually see this in the interface that looks like quite a number of people went to bed early. My sources tell me that might not have been the case, but it's good that people enjoyed hanging out at the the Cadillac Ranch party, and we're seeing real-time the data coming in. Bobby McGee's party, not as popular. I was preparing for the presentation last night. Some people went to the gym. Way to go, Kirsten. I was checking your data out before. But you can see real time we're bringing that data in. And so we're really proud of what we've been able to do in this. And this is a great example of a mobility application, right? We're pulling data in from the telemetry we're generating, right? We're leveraging MicroStrategy Mobile and our analytic framework to source and store all this. And we're bringing that data real time. So the new platform analytics platform takes and leverages data in real time, right? You showed what I could do earlier when I can actually model data, and that's the strength. So let's just flip back across to the presentation. So in summary, these are the 3 key areas we've been working on. So agility and usability for our business users, right? The ability to build and deploy powerful apps, and the ability for us to open the ecosystem. Every morning, when I come into the office at 9 o'clock in the morning, well, I'm in earlier than 9, but when I start my meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, right, I start with a customer meeting. And we go through either escalations, product ideas, and we sit down with myself, head of support, a number of the leaders from the organization, and I start my day thinking about our customers. I think about you every day. And I think about what are the challenges you're trying to solve, and how can I help you? How can I help you every single day to make your current deployments better? And how can I help you future-proof you? So over this last hour or so, hopefully I communicated some of the things we're working on. If at any point in time you feel things are getting stuck in the support process and you'd like to escalate, please do. Please contact your support person, your account rep, and there is a regular daily escalation process, and I am more than willing to look at review any case as it occurs. Thank you everyone for your time.